It was a great start, introduction to the overall conceptual side, the pathways, and some initial take on what we do know. We have plenty of time for discussion now, so we'd like to open up for a round of discussion. If you do have a question, please say who you are, what organization, and put your question. There's a microphone somewhere roving around, so please go ahead. No. No questions. That's well, okay. We can go then.
You can have your tea now.
That's unusual. No questions? Okay. we can move into the. We have one question here. Hold on. We'll get the microphone. Do you have?
Okay, there's a microphone.
Madam, you have categorically pointed out that at the national level, the disconnect between agriculture and nutrition is somewhat varying. But specifically, very often you have mentioned that there is a significant proportion of disconnect between agriculture and nutrition at state level. But now I would like to know which are the states are having a very serious or larger disconnect between agriculture and nutrition. You have not highlighted the number of states coming under the purview of the so-called disconnect between agriculture and nutrition.
Yeah, I did point out in REM, in all fairness to Gujarat or Andhra Pradesh, the last round of nutrition indicators that we have are from 2006 to 2005, 2006. And so the estimates are from there. So I think in the next rounds, we will have a better understanding of what are the long-term implications of the growth process, and we would all like to see them moving. So there are some, but I'm happy to provide the draft background paper we have, in which there are tables upon tables on how those have played out. Thank you.
I think in trying to understand this disconnect between economic growth, or for that matter, agricultural growth and undernutrition, in your project, have you tried to see the pattern of growth, whether it is really skewed against the poor so much in the recent period, the period in which you have been studying? Because obviously the incidence of malnutrition is higher among the agricultural labor and small and marginal farmers. So what are the benefits they are getting from whatever growth that is been happening? So this is one issue I thought needs to be investigated.
Maybe we'll take a few, or do you want to specifically respond to that?
Professor Abhijit Sen will talk more about that as well, and Mahendra Dev and others may also help me in the question. But there is a recent detailed review of some of these aspects of declines in poverty, growth patterns by Martin Ravelion and Gaurav Dutt. And what they say is that, in fact, the recent growth, although the pace they feel may have slowed down somewhat, and they say there is not enough data either way to say that the the economic reforms have increased or decreased the growth pace of poverty reduction. That's what they say, but that it is is following the historical trend. So apparently there is not enough data to say that the poverty reduction has been much slower from a historical perspective, but there's not enough because of the data measurement in issues, there is not enough robust evidence to show that economic reforms have worked either way. So, anything else to?
I would just, if you look at, I think you raise a very important point that if you take monthly per capita expenditure by household type, that is for farmer and farm wage laborer, if you confine to agriculture sector, and then see the changes between 83, 93 and 2006 in monthly per capita expenditure and poverty, what I discovered was that the per annum rate of decline in poverty is much less for the farm wage laborer compared to the self-employed in agriculture. Similarly, the decline in increase in the monthly per capita expenditure is much less for farm wage labor as compared to the farmer. So there is an unequal gains in the distribution of income, you may like to say, particularly between 93 and 2006, the 90 decade of 90s.
In the paper, what they've done is basically looking at the across states agriculture growth and the changes in the nutrition levels. So there they don't find the correlation between these two. So that's where the disconnect happens. But they also looked at the groups of states. So some groups of states it is there is a connection, and some groups it's not there. For example, Gujarat had higher growth, but still the malnutrition is 44% or 45%. So there the pattern of growth and that kind of issues may come. But if you see the across states, it's concentrated on mostly in rain-fed and dryland areas like Madhya Pradesh, eastern and the other states, the malnutrition levels compared to southern states and other states. So there for increase in agriculture productivity and other things might reduce the nutrition. Because I think Ashok paper shows that if you take the levels of productivity, there is a correlation between malnutrition and the agriculture productivity levels. But if you see the changes, it's not showing. So there is maybe there is across group some happening. So, but if you see the nutrition levels, it's more concentrated in rain-fed and dryland areas. In fact, Madhya Pradesh is 60% malnutrition levels. So, so their increase in agriculture productivity, like Abhijit was telling, the availability things, diversification, those things may help reduction in nutrition.
Do you want to use this?
It's only a small point building on the discussion which we just now had. I thought that in the project, when we are trying to look at the long-term trends to be able to find the systemic link between the causal factors and the pathways, I thought it's very important to also simultaneously conduct more of primary based and context specific research which feeds into this, because we all know that the long-term time trend based macro level analysis is very, very crucial, fundamental, but it has a time lag, number one, and number two, it actually does not necessarily give us the kind of handle that one needs to needs for actually designing the instruments and policies. So I would only reiterate the importance of doing simultaneously doing large number of well-defined location-specific primary studies.
Thank you very much. It's a very good point. We have one person here and a gentleman here, but you first, Evelyn.
Thank you so much, but I think my question, the question that I wanted to ask was already answered by you, so thank you for that. I was asking about the productivity and nutrition nexus, if we may find so, but it's already there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and you can pass the microphone. Thank you very much.
Very good morning. I am Ashish Vele, Nirmal Seeds, private sector company. I have very specific observation from your presentation, and I would like to know more about it. When you say malnutrition problem and the areas which you have specified, specifically says some part of MP, Andhra Pradesh and Gujarat, where the yield levels may have been increased, and those two crops which everyone knows in the green revolution are directly related to paddy and wheat. But the areas where the productivity has increased, still that much amount of malnutrition problem may not have been noticed. I'm not sure, it's you to decide. Those are Maharashtra, some part of Rajasthan, and maybe it is attributed to the food consumption pattern which is related to more of a sorghum and pearl millet. And this is very important because nutritional value of those two crops is totally different than wheat and paddy, because high amount of iron and zinc content in those two crops is well noted by everyone, and I think we need to focus on that. Whether increasing the yield is only reason and malnutrition in those areas where the yield has been also increased, still it is not observed. Is it because of pearl millet and sorghum? Thanks.
Thank you for that. Ashok, question here, and then Abhijit also.
Thank you very much. Ashok from IFPRI. Fascinating presentation. Congratulations. Two small questions. When you look at the state agriculture growth and what is happening to child malnutrition particularly, one is, in your literature review, have you found anywhere what is the lag between today's agriculture growth, whether it takes 5 years or 10 years to result that into the improvement in the children, because it's not today's growth immediately resulting into improvement in children. Second, have you looked at any paper or your own exercise at a state level particularly, the volatility of agriculture growth is very high. The coefficient of variation, especially in rain-fed states. So even if a 10-year average may be a good enough growth rate, but if the volatility is so high, it doesn't really, result into sustainable situation in terms of improvement. So these two factors need to be investigated. Perhaps if you have an answer, that would be very useful. Thank you.
Sorry, yes. Okay. Oh, he's doing more.
Derek, so yeah, I've tested the lag, but it doesn't improve the results, and I've tested volatility, and there's no significant results really.
In terms of, that was also my point about how we don't have nutrition data that helps us update, a surveillance system that helps us update or track these lags in a much more rigorous fashion over a period of time. And your point about volatility is also well noted, and I have read a lot of your work expressing concern about that. I don't know why India has and states have such volatility, and whereas in countries like Vietnam they have better, better grip on that. But I think those issues will come up. But, yes.
I just wanted to set some things again in context, and in a sense correct, I suppose, what I said from there. I said, let's get back to issues which relate agriculture to nutrition from simply the access thing. I think that's still important. But the drift I get from the short session of questions and answers is that we are going back to a very one-way causality. Does the availability of production reduce malnutrition? Or indeed, if one goes a little bit, does incomes improve, simply higher incomes improve the malnutrition situation? And the answer to both of these is very iffy. I mean, if you take availability in terms of calories produced in a place per capita, the correlation is almost nil. When you look at incomes, it's slightly better. It correlates better with poverty. But the fact is, those correlations are pretty low, whichever way you look at it. And I think what we are forgetting is the whole side. I mean, we know that at least child malnutrition has much more to do with feeding habits rather than the quantity of food. We know it has much more to do with breastfeeding, and we also know it has a lot to do with water quality. I think the issues which need to be raised in the context of the relationship between agriculture and malnutrition is that let's not get too carried away by any one-way relationships. And a moot question is that does the process of agricultural growth, does it set into motion either demands for better health? Does that get responded by the state? And do they also have any effect on things like the quality of the water? I mean, agricultural growth has a relationship with the environment. And as I said, I would like the whole discussion to go back to the availability issue from access, but I think we're sort of jumping in a bit too much. Thanks.
Point, and thank you very much for that, that comment. We have just one more question, and we will need to go in the next session. So there's a gentleman, time for following. So we'll take the person there behind.
Thank
The person behind you, actually. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Tola from Nigeria. Agriculture is a source of food, it's a source of income. I want to know, in India, how far is agriculture a source of raw materials for the industries compared to its being a source of food for the household?
Yeah, I have a very brief comments. When we look at the link between agriculture and nutrition, in a country like India, where 80 crops are grown and so many livestock products, etc., two dimensions of growth are very important. Unless you look at them, you will get this kind of confusion. One is what is composition of growth. What is growing at what rate, what is growing, what is not growing. If cotton is growing and Gujarat is having 10% growth rate, it has different implication than if cereals are growing or livestock product is growing. So unless you look at the composition and then link, you will continue to have sometime weak relationship, sometime no relationship or things like that. Then second is inequality associated with this growth. I did not look at state level data, I look at country specific data for Asia. The results were so strong that the power of inequality in affecting hunger and poverty is 4 to 5 times than what is the power of growth. So I feel these two aspects, composition and inequality associated with growth, are very important.
Thank you.
Sorry, Brad Gilmore with Agri-Food Canada. The question that I have, in a sense, goes back to the issue that Dr. Sen placed an emphasis on. I'm wondering about policy bias and the fact that most countries tend to favor a certain subset of crops, rice, wheat, corn. And in that sense, when we measure agri-food GDP writ large, we're sometimes measuring policy bias as well, and to the extent it favors, it helps to support incomes for the growing of those crops, and then you get a narrower range of nutritional benefits from those crops as well. So I'm wondering if that's one of the reasons why you're getting kind of an iffy relationship, and if it is the farmer population that's most at risk, then if they're encouraged through policy to pursue the production of those particular crops, you may not get the bang for buck from a GDP nutritional perspective. But it's just conjecture. So I'm wondering whether the data are detailed or have enough information in them to give you that kind of subtlety as you explore them. Thanks.
Taken and noted from all the audience who have posed questions and made comments. Your point well taken, but as Professor Sen was saying, I mean, there is data, and Ashok has written a lot about the improved production of fruits and vegetables and high-value crops in the recent times. But it is also important to note that there are other aspects of healthcare and water and so on and so forth that will also impact the nutrition. So we really do need to, as far as the growth bypasses or does not include large sections of the society, and the policies even within those sectors bypass the large sections of the society, such as women or scheduled castes or tribes, then they're less likely to take advantage of even the high-value products, or even if they are available in the markets, then they're much likely to take advantage of it. So I really do think one of the key entry points for agriculture to impact any of these pathways is, in fact, to be more because it's a more inclusive growth process, or so should be. It need not be, but that's where the policies are important. Pro-poor policies are important. But I think Dr. Amita Shah will talk more about that in the following session.
Thank you very much. And I think we would like now to move into that next session. So I'd like to call on Meenakshi, Amaresh Dubey, Himanshu, and Dr. Amita Shah to come forward for that. Thank you.